They sold her house while she was burying her husband. The soil was still fresh on the grave when her phone vibrated. Unknown number. She stepped away from the folding chairs. Wind moving the funeral tent fabric. "Ma'am, congratulations on your recent property transfer." She froze. "What property?" "The residence at 214 Willow Creek Drive." Her hand tightened around the funeral program. Ink smudged under her thumb. "That house isn't for sale." Silence. "Ma'am, it closed this morning." She drove home in black heels. The street looked normal. Mailbox, oak tree, white fence. Then she saw it. A red sold sign planted into her front yard. Two men were carrying her dining chairs through the doorway. The front door was wide open. She walked up the steps. "Who are you?" One of the movers checked his clipboard. "New owners took possession today." Possession. The word hit harder than grief. Her son Daniel stepped out of the house. Dark suit. Same tie from the funeral. "You shouldn't have come back yet." She stared at him. "What did you do?" He handed her a folder. Closing documents. Warranty deed. Settlement statement. Buyer, Mark Ellison. Seller, Margaret Hale. Her name printed clean. Her signature at the bottom, but she had never signed it. The notary stamp was dated yesterday. Yesterday, she was at the funeral home identifying her husband's body. "Daniel," she said quietly, "where did you get this?" He didn't answer. He pointed toward the driveway. A black SUV pulled in. The buyer stepped out holding a cashier's check receipt. "We wired the full amount," the buyer said. "Title cleared." Title cleared. Margaret looked back at the paper. One line caught her eye. Marital status. Widow. She was still legally married at the time of transfer. Her husband had died that morning. The deed was executed at 9:14 a.m. Time of death on hospital certificate, 11:32 a.m. She looked up slowly. "You filed this before he died." Daniel's jaw tightened. No one checks timestamps that closely. The movers kept walking past her. Boots across hardwood. Her hardwood. Margaret stepped aside, but she was not done. She turned and walked back to her car, pulled out her reading glasses, opened the settlement statement again, and found the one line Daniel didn't notice. Spousal acknowledgement required under state homestead law. No second signature. No waiver attached. She closed the folder carefully. Then she dialed one number. County Recorder's Office. "Has this deed been officially recorded yet?" Keyboard clicking. Pause. "Yes, ma'am. 23 minutes ago." She checked her watch. 23 minutes. The law allowed correction filings within the same business hour. If fraud was declared immediately. She opened her trunk. Inside, her husband's old briefcase. Inside the briefcase, the original homestead declaration. Filed 1998, both signatures. Protected property from unilateral transfer. Daniel had never removed it, because he didn't know it existed. Margaret shut the trunk. Across the yard, Daniel watched her. Confident, smiling slightly. He thought it was done. He was wrong. Margaret walked back toward the house. Not to argue. To buy time. "Daniel," she said calmly, "did you inform the buyer about the homestead protection?" The buyer looked up. "Homestead?" Daniel's eyes flickered. "There is no issue," he said quickly. "Title cleared." Margaret turned to the buyer. "Sir, did the title company require a spousal waiver?" The buyer hesitated. "I signed what they gave me." "That wasn't my question." Silence. Margaret stepped aside and dialed again. "County Recorder? I need to file an emergency affidavit of fraudulent transfer under homestead statute." Keyboard clicking. "Are you alleging unauthorized execution?" "Yes." "Ma'am, once recorded, reversal requires court order." "I'm not reversing yet, I'm flagging." Pause. "We can mark it pending investigation." "That's all I need." Daniel stepped closer. "What are you doing?" She didn't raise her voice. preserving evidence. The buyer shifted uncomfortably. Margaret opened the old briefcase on the hood of her car. Inside, a stamped copy of the 1998 Homestead Declaration. 2 signatures. Raised county seal. Daniel stared at it. "You never showed me that." "You never asked?" Boots continued moving furniture. Margaret raised her hand. "Stop moving anything," she told the buyer. "You may want to call your title insurance company." The buyer pulled out his phone. "What's happening?" he asked into it. Margaret spoke clearly so the buyer could hear. "In this state, homestead property cannot be transferred without both spouses' acknowledgement. My husband was alive at the time of execution." Daniel's jaw tightened. He was dying. Alive is alive. The buyer's face drained of color. "What time was the deed signed?" he asked. Margaret flipped the page. 9:14 a.m. She pulled the folded hospital certificate from her purse. Time of death, 11:32 a.m. Wind lifted the edge of the paper. Daniel's voice dropped. "No one checks that?" Margaret looked at him. "I do." The buyer stepped away, speaking urgently on the phone. Margaret heard one word clearly. "Defect." Daniel grabbed her arm. "You're going to ruin this." She removed his hand slowly. "You already tried." 10 minutes later, the buyer approached. "Title company is reviewing. They said if this is accurate, funds can be frozen." Daniel turned sharply. "They can't freeze my money," Margaret corrected him. "It's not your money yet." Daniel pulled another document from his folder. Power of attorney. Signed 2 months prior. He held it up. "Dad authorized me." Margaret's eyes scanned it. Durable POA, but one clause was circled in pen. Effective upon incapacity certified by 2 physicians. She looked at Daniel. "Do you have 2 certifications?" Silence. Hospital only provided 1 evaluation. The buyer slowly stepped backward. Margaret took out her phone again. This time she called the hospital records department. "Did my husband receive a formal incapacity certification signed by 2 doctors?" Hold music. Wind across the yard. Daniel's breathing shallow now. The line clicked. "No, ma'am. Only 1 attending physician signed." Margaret nodded. "Thank you." She ended the call. The buyer spoke quietly. "If the POA wasn't activated properly," Margaret finished the sentence, "then he had no authority to sign." Daniel's confidence cracked. "You're dragging this into court?" Margaret looked him in the eye. "No, you did." Across the yard, a county vehicle turned the corner. White sedan. Seal on the door. Title fraud investigator. The buyer had already escalated. Daniel's face lost all color. The investigator stepped out with a clipboard. "Which one of you filed the homestead affidavit?" Margaret raised her hand. "That would be me." The investigator turned to Daniel. "I'll need the original signing records and notary contact." Daniel swallowed. The notary handled everything. "Name?" Daniel hesitated. Margaret already knew that pause. It was the sound of collapse beginning. The investigator wrote something down. "Until review is complete, transfer is flagged. Buyer advised not to alter property." Boots stopped moving inside. The movers came out. Confused. Daniel leaned toward Margaret, voice low. "You're choosing paperwork over your own son," she answered calmly. "I'm choosing law over fraud." The investigator looked at Daniel again. "Sir, were you present at execution?" Daniel opened his mouth and stopped. Because Margaret reached into the briefcase again and pulled out something he had forgotten. Security footage receipt from the funeral home, time-stamped, showing her location at 9:14 a.m., the exact moment her signature appeared on the deed. Daniel's shoulders dropped. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The courtroom was cold. Daniel sat at the defense table. No more confidence, no more smiling. The buyer sat behind him, arms crossed. Margaret sat straight, blue folder on her lap. The investigator had already filed a preliminary fraud notice. Now it was official. Daniel's attorney stood. "Your Honor, the power of attorney granted full authority." Margaret's attorney responded calmly. "Only upon medical certification by 2 physicians, the requirement was never satisfied." He placed hospital records on the table. 1 signature, not 2. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Where is the second certification?" Daniel's lawyer flipped pages. Nothing. Then Daniel produced something new, a notarized affidavit, signed by the notary, stating both parties were present during signing. Margaret didn't react. She waited. The judge turned to Margaret's attorney. "Your response?" He stood. "We subpoenaed the notary." Murmur in courtroom. Door opened. An older man walked in. Richard Benton, the notary. He took the stand. Sworn in. Margaret watched closely. "Did you witness both signatures on the deed?" Silence. Benton swallowed. "No, Your Honor." Daniel's head snapped toward him. "I was asked to stamp a prepared document." The room shifted. "You stamped it without physical presence?" the judge asked. "Yes?" Daniel's attorney objected. Too late. Margaret's attorney placed another document down. Phone location data. Daniel's cell phone pinged near the notary's office at 9:02 a.m. Her cell phone pinged at the funeral home. Different sides of town, same minute. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Hale, did your mother sign this document in your presence?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "She intended to. That was not my question." Silence. Handwriting expert called to stand. Large board displayed. Left side, Margaret's verified signatures from tax records. Right side, signature on deed. The expert pointed. Pressure pattern inconsistent. He zoomed image. The capital M lacks habitual loop. He circled the stroke. This is simulated writing. Forgery. Clear. Concrete. Final. Daniel looked smaller now. The buyer shook his head slowly. But Daniel had one last card. He stood abruptly. She knew about the sale. The room froze. Margaret didn't move. Daniel continued. She told me to handle it. She wanted the money. Margaret's attorney remained calm. Proof? Daniel placed printed emails on the table. Purported emails from Margaret approving sale. Margaret's attorney didn't blink. He turned to the investigator. Forensic digital report, please. The investigator handed up a document. IP trace. Email account accessed from Daniel's home router. 3 days before funeral. Password reset requested from Daniel's laptop. Daniel's face drained. Judge looked directly at him. Did you access your mother's email account? Daniel hesitated. That hesitation lasted too long. The judge spoke slowly. Forgery of deed, fraudulent notarization, unauthorized digital impersonation, she paused, and attempted unlawful transfer of homestead property. Gavel struck once. Sharp. Transfer declared void pending final order. Funds frozen. Criminal referral submitted. The buyer exhaled heavily. Margaret remained still. Daniel looked at her. Not angry now, not confident. Afraid. The judge set final ruling for next morning. Margaret gathered her folder. As she stood, Daniel whispered, "You're sending me to prison." She answered without emotion. "You sent yourself." Outside the courthouse, reporters had begun gathering. Word travels fast when property fraud hits public record. Margaret walked past them. No statement, no drama, just documents under her arm. Tomorrow would finish it. The courtroom was quieter the next morning. No reporters inside, just the judge, clerk, attorneys, Daniel, Margaret. The judge read from the file. Forgery confirmed by expert testimony. Improper notarization admitted. Power of attorney invalid due to unmet activation clause. Electronic impersonation verified by forensic report. Paper turned. Clear. Methodical. The deed transfer dated 9:14 a.m. is declared null and void. Gavel. The sale to Mr. Ellison is legally rescinded. The buyer nodded once, relieved. All wired funds are to be returned immediately. Daniel stared forward. No reaction. The judge continued. Additionally, the court finds probable cause for criminal prosecution under Elder Financial Exploitation Statute. Daniel closed his eyes. Bailiff. Metal cuff sound. Not loud, but final. Margaret did not look away. The judge wasn't finished. Restitution hearing set for damages related to attempted unlawful sale and emotional distress tied to property interference. Margaret's attorney stood. Your Honor, we also request protective order to prevent further coercion. Granted. Signed. Stamped. The clerk's stamp echoed in the room. Solid. Official. Outside the courthouse, Daniel tried once more. They'll drop the charges if you ask. Margaret stopped walking. You filed papers while your father was still alive. No anger, just fact. You used my name. Silence. You signed for me. She stepped into her car. Door shut. Conversation over. By afternoon, the county recorder updated the file. Deed status, void. Flag removed. Ownership restored. Margaret Hale, sole lawful owner. But one final document remained. Title insurance issued a formal defect notice. The buyer filed civil claim against Daniel personally. Not against Margaret. Against Daniel. Financial liability shifted. Completely. 2 weeks later, the house was quiet again. The sold sign gone. The white fence still standing. Margaret hired a locksmith. New deadbolt installed. The click this time sounded clean. Correct. Inside, her husband's chair remained by the window. She placed the certified court order in the blue binder. Right behind the mortgage release letter. Both protected by the same law. Paper, ink, signatures, proper ones. Daniel accepted a plea agreement 3 months later. Reduced charge, probation, restitution, financial penalties, criminal record permanent. Court does not forget timestamps. Margaret planted new flowers along the front steps. Neighbors waved again. Normal returned. Not because emotions healed, but because documents corrected the lie. Integrity does not argue loudly. It files. It preserves. It verifies. And it waits for the right stamp. If someone tried to transfer your home while you were grieving, would you know which document protects you? Comment below. Do you keep copies of your homestead declaration? Or are you trusting someone else to handle it? And if you believe law matters more than pressure, if you believe signatures still mean something, subscribe. This channel is for people who read before they sign.